pumps, who'd have them? Quite a lot of people actually. According to figures from the Renewables Energy Association, the number of heat pumps installed in the UK has grown from around 20,000 in 2010 to roughly 130,000 in 2020. That number is likely to be far greater today, with UK government's target to reach 600,000 annual heat pump installations by 2028. Hi, I'm Lewis from Mesh. So what needs to be in place for a heat pump to work effectively? Well, climate is a huge factor. For a heat pump to work efficiently, there needs to be a considerable difference between the temperature of the ground or the air and the liquid within the pump. The UK has what's called a temperature maritime climate. That means that our weather is not too hot and not too cold, but is also affected by outside factors such as warm fronts and cold snaps brought on by the wider continental and oceanic weather system. Some arguments against heat pumps in the UK state that their efficiency will be limited in much colder weather, typically seen in January and February, a time when buildings need the heat the most. As a rule of thumb, the less heat there is in the air or the ground, the harder the compressor has to work. In this scenario, the heat pump will need to use more electricity, but as we look at recent heat pump figures from Greenpeace and the European Heat Pumps Association, we see that colder countries such as Sweden, Finland and Norway have sold up to 20 times more heat pumps per 1,000 households than the UK. And that's as of 2020. So the next time somebody tells you that our climate is too cold for a heat pump, put them right. Now, let's look at installation, and specifically installation in a typical UK home. Let's imagine you live in a semi-detached house with two private side alleys separating you and your detached neighbour. Generally, this is a space in which you'd install an air source heat pump. A, because it's close to the house and avoids running unnecessary pipework through your garden, and B, it keeps it out of sight when considering the front and rear elevation of your home. Now, let's be fair here. UK homes are built fairly snug to one another. There isn't a lot of space around, and if there is, it's often used for access. Further still, placing a heat pump in one of these areas may create a low-level noise nuisance for your neighbours. This isn't the case in every single situation, but in a scenario where space is limited, a bedroom is nearby, and perhaps your neighbour doesn't have double-glazed windows, it could be an issue. A way around this is to install the heat pump further away from the house, maybe at the end of the garden. But that will incur additional installation costs, and you might want to hide the heat pump behind a shrub or a bit of trellis. Don't like that word. Trellis. Another factor of installation is your home's radiators and pipework. This has to be taken into account because of the way a heat pump distributes heat. You may be used to your traditional gas-fired boiler heating up your house fairly quickly. Because a heat pump operates at a lower temperature and a lower flow rate, it will heat up your house more steadily. As such, larger radiators alleviate this issue by increasing the surface area of your heat source. In some cases, such as larger homes, it may be necessary to increase the diameter of your pipework too. Understandably, this may put some homeowners or even commercial property owners off because we typically bury our pipes in brick or concrete. This becomes a non-issue if you're installing a heat pump during a construction or renovation phase, but will obviously increase cost and upheaval when installing a heat pump in a traditional building that's relied on standard radiators and 18mm copper pipes for so many years. This conundrum can be applied to ground source heat pumps too. The more ground you can use, the more effective your heat pump will be. And there's no way around digging up your entire garden or outside space, so if your commercial or residential building has a relatively small exterior space, you might find that a ground source heat pump isn't an option. A final point specific to the UK is expertise. Heat pumps can still be considered an emerging technology in Great Britain. We are far behind many continental countries, and as such, there is a shortage of expertise from sellers to installers. This will improve over time, but right now it's interesting to see the UK government's targets alongside this skill shortage. Of course, this is supply and demand. As more residential and commercial properties show interest in heat pump installations, the more heating installers will start to diversify their skills and offerings. What's important is that the industry as a whole treats this as a learning opportunity. With no two installations the same, it's crucial that installers understand the nuances presented by homes old and new throughout the UK. So, what's holding back heat pump uptake in the UK? The barrier to entry for many homeowners or builders can be cost, installation or space. These are practical, tangible factors that in some cases cannot be avoided, but we think it's important that everyone understands the benefits of heat pumps and why they're a viable, low energy, low carbon heating solution for buildings. There are many arguments against heat pumps that are specific to the UK, but as an industry we can overcome these challenges and help us slowly move towards more sustainable and renewable ways of heating and cooling our homes. I'm Lewis from Mesh, the Renewable Energy Consultancy, and this has been Ask the Expert.